Hello, this is Lisa Rose here on Connect to Love on PRN-FM, and I'm joined by the incredible, inspiring Michael J. Russ. I want to say welcome, Michael. I am so grateful for so many things that you inspire me, and you keep me on point, and I'm just so grateful for all of it. And so welcome.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. It's always fun. I do mean hilariously fun to kick around with you. We have such great topics, great conversations, and they are hopefully to our PRNFN listeners here. I hope that they're getting something out of this. We're in a new year, and all I'll say is that not everything we talk about applies to everyone. Generally, it's pick and choose what works for you, because there's a lot of nuggets here that can apply to a vast number of people, a large variety of people. So happy for your listenership.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And, we do this show completely unscripted, and it is really, I think, a show that comes from our hearts and a lot of times from our minds and our inspiration. Oftentimes Michael and I will connect on a completely unrelated topic, and I put out to him, what do you want to speak about? And then he'll send me a message, and then oftentimes I think, whether it be my guides or my inner soundtrack, it'll take over. And so today, after Michael said, well, let's talk about, creating your reality, I was just going about my day, and I started hearing a song by Blue Suede in my head, Hooked on a Feeling. And it was really interesting because I had to look up the lyrics because they were so profound and so appropriate, I think, for creation, because it said, I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. I'm hooked on a feeling, I'm high on believing. And it says in the thing that you're in love with me, but it's actually, I think, more appropriate to say, it's all about self-love. And when you get a feeling and you get inspired. And so as my wandering mind often does, I started thinking about creating your reality in relationship to a hook. And I thought about a fish on a hook. And then I thought, well, no, it's not really that. You are catching something, but why would this come in? And then I thought about a hooked rug. And in the early 1900s, maybe before then, people had to be very creative in what they didn't have a lot of resources. So they took a piece of burlap and they would take whatever scrap fabric that they had, and they would take that fabric and make it into small, basically weaving material, where they would take the scraps and then pull it through and pull it through and pull it through. And before you knew it, you would have a rug, and they was a hooked rug, and they became pretty much, I don't know, a lot of them have actually become very collectible, but they were really just scraps of cloth. And I think that it was just such a good metaphor for the topic today, because when we want to imagine a world where our deepest desires aren't just daydreams, we take little bits and pieces and we weave them into what becomes a vibrant tapestry of what is our fabric of reality. And I think that is really an amazing place to start, because when you have these passions, these little embers that are within you, that we want to bring forth into a reality, there's lots of different directions. But if you just take one piece of fabric and weave it in, and then you're ready for the next one and your next one and your next one, until it becomes something beautiful. So I just thought that would be a fun starting point. I've had that song in my head ever since I mentioned it to you. And it was originally, I think it was done by B.J. Thomas, and then Blue Suede, I think, made it famous. It was in Guardians of the Galaxy, a couple other movies. But yeah, I'll be singing it probably for the next couple days, Hooked on a Feeling.
Yeah.
I unbelieve it.
Yeah, I believe that's wonderful. What a great example, weaving. Just thinking about that, weave one thing into your life at a time, into the way you interact with life at a time, and or weave one habit into the way that you operate, into your modus operandi, so to speak, and then just sooner or later they come together collectively. And I've always said, things are working the way you want. Changes you've made, alchemy you've performed, by the way you feel. It's if you feel awesome, if you feel exuberant, if you feel awesome, amazing, if you're fabulous, if you feel magnificent, if you feel energized and passionate about life and happy, that you're making the right choices and engaging in the right responses to what's going on. You're paying attention. You're heightening your level of awareness to the point where you're the one in control. You're the one dictating your own reality. And it's a wonderful thing to see. Even if it's just, one weave at a time, you know how you feel. There's a sense of satisfaction in taking control of your life. And that sense of satisfaction is huge as well. It's big. And I love it when I do it. And sometimes you don't sense that you feel awesome. You just kind of might take it for granted. However, I suggest you step back, and when you have that feeling, revel in it. Revel in it and make it, a part of you, because that's what you want. And literally validate the fact that, okay, this is working. And I'm feeling amazing, and I want this more often. So in order to get it more often, you have to respond to life in that way. You have to, in a positive way, you have to make sure that you recognize when you're trolling in the negative frequencies, brought down by who knows what. And then you turn around and go, wow, no, I don't want to be like that. That's not me. And you perform the alchemy necessary to elevate your frequencies to the ranges of love and peace and joy and happy and kind. And life is so much more fulfilling when you do that. So much more fulfilling. And you just have to sit back in gratitude and just say, oh my gosh, this works. And when it is working for you, it's awesome. And you just got to keep it working, because it's a day in, day out thing. Creating a reality is not something you just do once and then just, take your foot off the gas. You have to take an active role in your life to always be creating a reality, keeping your thought patterns in the higher frequencies and aligned with what you want in your life. Now, what sparked this whole thing was this cool little YouTube short by Anka. David, I think it's David Anka, right? I think it's David Anka.
Daryl. Daryl Anka.
Daryl, sorry. Who channels Bashar. I apologize. I spaced out for a minute. It's something that it's so simple. Talking about how when you behave, what people do is they look at their outer circumstances and for the change in their life. They look outwards and not changing their own thoughts, habits, behaviors, responses, not changing anything about themselves. They just expect their outside world to change. If they say, oh, I want this to change, and if I do this thing, it'll change. Well, it's not doing the thing that makes your life change, that makes your outer reality change. It's what you do inside that makes your outer reality change. That's the way it goes. And some people might say, oh, that's like putting the cart before the horse. Well, it's not really. If you think about it, your thinking creates your way of being, and it always has and it always will. Your thoughts create your way of being. So your perceptions of life, how you respond, think about responding, your perceptions of yourself within the context of your life, the circumstances that you're in, whatever it may be, the challenge or the misfortune that has unfolded before you, that you've been exposed to, what's going on in the world, your perceptions, that's all going to gauge whether or not you're happy or sad or angry, whatever it may be. And I'm fascinated by this because I've heard this put at least 4 or 5 different ways. There's the emotion. Yeah, there's the emotional component, right? Their emotion. You have to apply emotion to the way you behave. What Bashar's talking about is, and hopefully we'll put. I think I sent you the link. We'll put the link to the little short in the, because I can send it to you again. Put it in the description, because watching this little short will blow your mind because it's so simple and succinct. Behave the way that behave as if your reality has already changed. What you want, the reality you want to experience, is already happening. The other component to that is you must invest the emotion into it. You have to be emotionally connected to that behavior. That's the other trick. You just can't say, oh, yeah, that does it. But you've got to, wow, I do have that job. I do have that degree. How does it feel like? How do you behave as if you have that degree already? And are you excited and passionate by it? That is when things start working. And you have those feelings and that passion every single day, regardless of whether your outer circumstances have changed. As I say, you got 4 years to go. You've got to carry that on all the way through. That impassioned you, knowing that, behaving as if you already have that degree. And everything else is just the journey, the stepping stones that you're taking that will get you there. That reality is already there. Now, you have to enjoy the ride. Be happy. Be joyful about the little things all along the way, because it's not necessarily the destination that you're focused on. And that's really what I'm saying by behave. Most people want to, they don't want to feel like they've achieved something until they've actually achieved it, which is really, we come to understand backwards. And it trips up most people. And that is something that, but that's the key to creating a reality. That is the key. And when you start sitting around letting it bounce in and off the inside of your cranium, and really invest in it, things do change. Miracles, serendipity, all those circumstances, those things you call accidents or coincidences, begin to appear that validate your behavior. It's a fascinating concept.
Well, I think that we get these signposts, Michael, and you might call them gentle nudges for, I don't know, Wayne Dyer, who wrote so many of the books that have inspired me over the years, had wrote a brief anecdote about he was walking down the street in London, and he saw a store window with a quote in it by William Blake. And he was so moved by the quote, he wrote it down. And for years, he had forgotten about it. He lost it. He knows where he tucked it away. And then 10 years later, when he was looking for something, he found that quote, and he thought, oh my gosh, how could I have ignored this? He put it away. But it inspired a whole chapter in a book, and it was all about imagination. And imagination and I think along with imagination is also curiosity. But that became one of his books, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which is all about inspired action. What is it that gives us that life? For me, hearing that song, I mean, I will probably, I can almost consider it like a soundtrack to my soul, that there are things that move me. What am I paying attention to? So a lot of times in the wanderings of my mind, it will inspire me to the next step, or it will maybe perhaps cause me to turn left when I usually go right. And last night we had these horrific windstorms, and I am so used to going a certain way. And guess what? There was a big pine tree that came down and blocked the road. So guess what? I had to stop, put the car in reverse, and because there was no way I was going over it, just reroute. But how many times when we do that in life do we give up? We may have obstacles that come along our path when we are unthinkingly we're taking inspired action. And there's something like Wayne Dyer did. I'm so inspired by this quote, and he was all ready to move forward. But somehow there was something that kind of took him off course, and it got tucked away. And a lot of times, I think that's what's really important, that when you are working on creating this fabric of reality, you have sometimes these big gaps between your intention and your outcome. And sometimes it's just little steps. And that's why I really love that thing with the hooked rug, because I remember doing it as a kid. I don't know who gave me a kit, but you have this big pieces of yarn, and you got this box with this picture on it, and you can see it, what it's supposed to look like, but there are so many pieces of yarn. You gotta follow the pattern, and you pull them through, but before you know it, you have it done. And whether you turn it into a pillow or you turn it into a rug that you step on, or the cats want to use it to snuggle into, it really doesn't matter, but it's the joy of the journey. It's the joy in that creation. And that's really what I love about what Daryl Anka says about creating your reality, because there are sometimes things that take you away from your purpose. But I think if you follow your passions, rather than chasing a goal, you ask yourself, go within and ask yourself, what is it that moves me? What is my intention? What are the actions that can be fueled by this passion? And then you take a step, be it even just a small step, towards that manifestation. Even if it's just getting up an hour earlier to journal or do writer's pages. I used to love the book by Julia Cameron, The Artist Within, and she would encourage everybody to get up in the morning and do what she just called free-flowing writing, not thinking about anything. She would just on an 8x10 pad, you just write about whatever it is, like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this writing exercise again, or, geez, I got really upset about this, or, wow, this was so amazing, I can't believe this happened, or perhaps it is part of your book. But just to make that time, I mean, that's something as simple as the morning pages that she speaks about is an inspired action.
Exactly. So true. Yeah, the writing, it's interesting. There are so many things that you can do that can improve your life. I mean, the list is long. We could probably go on for several shows just listing all of the interesting things that you can do. If you're into art, you can freeform draw. Just sit down and just start drawing and see what comes out of your head. Like you were talking about there, freeform writing. That is a technique that really helps you understand not only more about yourself, but really where you're going and what you need. I mean, there's a myriad of wonderful benefits to doing that. I like to go putt on the golf putting range, and I get ideas because I have a single-minded focus. Taking a walk is another, where you just listening to the birds and watching the birds fly and listening for what's around, the wind rustling through the trees, and even cars going by, things that you would consider to be distracting, but they're really not. And it's just there's just taking a ride in the car with no music on. Taking a drive is always fun to me. Taking my top down, as long as it's not 40 degrees outside, 50, 55, I can deal with that. Turn on the heater and have it blasting up from the floorboard. The sun, when on a sunny day where the sun is hitting you and it's just so warm, you can wear dark clothing and it warms you up even more. There are a lot of things, and I would ask our listeners, what is it that actually takes you to that place where you are, where you intuit the miraculous for yourself? That's all part of creating your reality. It's knowing what you want. The biggest issue is that I think someone said Yeah, that genie comes, you rub the bottle, the genie comes out, gives you 3 wishes, and if they gave you a time limit, you couldn't come up with anything because you don't know what the heck you want. You know? You got 5 minutes, you got 3 wishes in 5 minutes, and you're like, you can't come up with anything. Right? There's a ton of things rolling around your head, and you can sit around and fantasize about it with a bunch of friends. Okay, what would you do? What wishes would you pick? Which is always interesting. But how often do you sit down and really think about what you want? I know this is the beginning of the year of the show. This is like the second show we've done this year. So there's a lot of people out there who on their minds have. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners have on their mind, okay, setting a goal for the year, what do you really want? This is the time people focus on what they really want out of this year and their lives and everything else more than any other time of the year. I say it's a 365-day thing because your wants change. They evolve. They become manifest. And you want something else. You know, and you've gotten better than you wanted. Now you're asking for bigger things. Right, so you want more out of yourself and out of your life. So literally, you have to sit down and say, "What is it that I really want?" and be clear about it, and then you can behave as if you already have it, and throw all kinds of emotion into it because it's what you want, and hopefully you know why. We had a conversation about this earlier this afternoon before the show. Why? It's the number one thing. I think it's more important, actually, in my view, it's more important than actually what you want, is knowing why you want it, right? Because that's where the passion and the drive and the commitment comes from. And, if I wanted to be a professional golfer or a golfer that shot even just 4 or 5 shots consistently lower than I do, then that why would drive everything in between that happened until I actually reached that point. My mindset, my actions, my thoughts, my responses to what went on surrounding it. And there are multiple levels of wants, right? Want in a relationship. Want at work, want in our right livelihood, want in terms of our financial needs. We want. Our passions, our habits, not our habits, but our the things that hobbies that we have for ourselves. This is it. Now, Bashar said something else I think that was so brilliant. Your passions, whatever you're passionate about, go after it. Do it. Even if it's leveled up on top of other passions. Because you have passions in many areas of your life. I'm passionate about my relationship with my girlfriend. I'm passionate about playing golf. I'm passionate about taking a drive once a month quietly, just, having a couple hours in the car by myself to think or listen to something or be inspired by something that I've been wanting to listen to for a while. There's all kinds of things, all kinds of levels to this, right? Some people have kids. You're passionate about your kids. You're passionate about your pets. Go after all of them is really the idea until you're no longer passionate about them. Go after them. And I thought about this and I said, what does that actually do? What's the benefit of doing that? The major benefit is life satisfaction. That's number one.
100.
Right? Life satisfaction. That's a biggie. And that around life satisfaction, it's like an umbrella. Life satisfaction is the umbrella, but there's happiness, there's joy, there's commitment, there's passion, there's drive, there's energy, creation from it. All these wonderful things that make life wonderful, worth living, that make you say, hey, I love life. That's the benefit. It's huge.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And, when you talk about wishes, that was one of the books that I loved that Wayne Dyer did. It was called Wishes Fulfilled. Manifesting, I think it was Mastering the Art of Manifesting. And in that book, he talked about the imagination and having a healthy imagination and reminding, and this was the thing that it anchored into me, was that you and your imagination is yours and yours alone. a lot of times we come up with an idea of something that we want to pursue, and we gather together a group of people, and we get their consensus. And we forget that if there's something burning, a desire burning within us, or maybe it's not even a burning desire yet, maybe it's just an inkling, it's something that keeps knocking on your door and in your brain, like, well, that would be really neat. Maybe I should try to pursue this, something that hasn't been seen before. It's so different. It takes a lot of courage to step up and do that. I had originally, it's so interesting because things come across my field, and I don't even remember where I heard this or where I read it originally. But there was a young man who was an African American. His name was Osborne Dorsey. And at the age of 16, and this was back in 1878, he invented the doorknob and the doorstop, which is so interesting because we take it for granted. It's something that is in everybody's home. Everybody, at the time, he said that it was, his words for it, it was extraordinary. It was an extraordinary invention. And of course, at that time period, a lot of people, there was pushback. To have this young man say, we need this in our homes. But, actually, it's really a great metaphor because it helped people close their doors, right?
Right.
And close their minds, close their doors. But I think that it just, at the time, and this was right after the Civil War, for him to have the courage to want to go to the patent office and take something that was a burning desire that he wanted to bring forth, that's really literally changed everybody's lives. I mean, doorknobs come in every shape, color, anything that you can imagine. But it was this young man's passion. This is something that he wanted to manifest, which I really, have to applaud him. I would love to know a little bit more about him. I'm going to have to do some research because it was just, I was like, wow, I never even thought about that. I just always expected that they existed.
Yeah, somebody's invented everything. Okay, so everything was invented by someone. The golf tee was invented by a black man on the East Coast. And yeah, I mean, it's like there's all these wonderful things that we don't know about, where they came from. But I'm going to step back to something real quick, which you said there, which is the idea of taking your idea, something that you have that has you've intuited, maybe guided to think about, guided to involve yourself in, because it may be aligned with, likely is aligned with your talents and your gifts, and you just don't know it yet, right? So the reason Dr. Joseph Murphy said something very interesting, and I remember it to this day, and it's one of the most challenging things because we have people we love in our lives, people we respect, and we want their validation of what it is that we are thinking, what we're actually going to go out and do, the actions we're going to take, or the thoughts we're having about the actions that we're going to take. We want validation that, it's the right way to go, instead of listening to our own intuition and our own gut and saying, this feels good, I'm going to do that, right? Trusting ourselves, trusting our own thoughts, trusting what our guide is giving us to us, right? What we're being guided to do, which is one of the most challenging things to do. But Dr. Joseph Murphy said something really brilliant. He said, don't tell anyone. He said, the last thing you want to, if you have an idea about something, do not share it with anyone. And the reason is because we are subject, we as humans are incredibly subject to suggestion. We are subject to suggestion. And that means when you bring the idea to somebody, if you respect them, you care about them, and you respect their opinion, and they tell you, that sounds like a bad idea, based on whatever lack of evidence they have, it could be that they knew somebody who went bankrupt with that idea, or someone who hurt themselves with that idea because they didn't have the talents or the gifts that maybe they have. Something happened, something bad happened to them, and they're like, no, you shouldn't do that because any number of really bad things could occur. And then you drop it. You drop the idea. And I can't tell you how many times that I've heard people say, "Oh, I had that idea." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Really?" Yeah. Somebody else had the wherewithal with regard to the resources, the time, and the skill that they had honed. When the idea came to them, your idea, which also became their idea, because we live in a consciousness where, as we all know, and we've talked about on the show, ideas, what you think about doesn't just dissipate into the air like steam. It goes somewhere and it begins to manifest. And we have a collective consciousness, and all these ideas are there. So somebody in one part of the world can have an idea, and you darn well better believe somebody else on the other side of the world, somewhere else, even in the other side of the country, has having the same idea, and maybe thought of the same name for that idea, right? Mm-hmm. There are movie people who say this all the time. Yeah, I had that idea, and then somebody else had it, and they followed through on it, and they collectively gathered the resources and people who had skills that they didn't have that could help bring it to reality. And you had the idea, but you know what? You got talked out of it. By somebody else's injecting you with a thought virus, injecting your mind with a thought virus of that won't work. You'll go bankrupt. Where are you going to get the money from? Da, 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 da. Here I can name 12 things that'll go wrong, or 12 reasons why that will never work for you. Well, you know what? They don't know. They don't know. And back in the day, which is interesting. It's likely that there was a period of Reconstruction in this country. It's a little history lesson. There was a period of Reconstruction between the Civil War and Jim Crow in this country, where there were many educated black people went to university, became educated. They even went for public office and U.S. Congress and Senate and won in local and national government. Then all that kind of was wiped out. In southern states, it was wiped out by something called Jim Crow. But anyway, it was a time of tremendous, and I do mean tremendous, invention and opportunity. And I would bet dollars to donuts that the gentleman who invented the doorknob invented it during that period of Reconstruction, which is really interesting. May not, mm-hmm. But I could just about lay. I have a book here about black inventors, which is really awesome, that I pull out and
yeah, I'd love to learn more about them if you find them in your book.
Oh, no, the book is only on black inventors. Everything in there was invented. Again, you'd be very surprised. We'll talk about it sometime. I'll pull it out on the show, and we'll blow some minds of our listeners around the world. The interesting thing is, this all falls into what we were talking about kind of last week with, what we think is possible is in no way what is possible, because generally it's something greater than that. We're just not thinking big enough. We're not thinking big enough. And when we're talking about creating our reality and taking action to do it, we have to think bigger. And my own guide has told me, why are you putting a specific number on that? Mm-hmm. It's not the number. It's you can go into infinity with everything that you do. There's no limit. And somebody said, I think it was Bashar, that said, doubt and limitation are the two biggest problems with our world of 8 billion plus people. Limitation and doubt. People put limitations on themselves, what they can do, what they're capable of, their thinking, their wants, their needs, everything. We live in a limitless world where an infinite number of things are possible. Mm-hmm. If we combine belief with intuition and action, anything is possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Michael, in that same framework, oftentimes the universe will not bring us down the path that we expect. If we want it, we're envisioning our dream life and what we think that we want, and it may come in exactly like that. Very rarely, I think that it unfolds. I think that oftentimes the universe has a better plan for us, and so it may come in an unexpected form. I sent you a video this morning, and it tickled me because this young girl posted it of this gentleman who actually posted a TikTok video about meeting her, and it was in Oregon, and it was really sweet because she was sitting in the car. And he noticed her, and whatever, he went into the store, but she was still sitting in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was still sitting in the car when he came out, and she rolled down the window, and she wanted to know if he was single. He said in the video that he was actually gay, so you're basically barking up the wrong tree. But he was so touched by the fact that, she saw him as handsome, and she saw him as this. And perhaps he's not a love interest for her, but perhaps and I thought it was such a good teaching, because she is equally touched the fact that he went on TikTok to talk about her and the experience of meeting her, and how he didn't see himself necessarily in the way that she saw him. And she came on later and basically said, well, I reached out because I'm 35 and I want to get married and I want to have kids. And so obviously she's having difficulty meeting people, but you don't know. So who would have ever expected that video would have surfaced? And who knows what eligible young men might be knocking on her door because they thought, well, geez, that girl's kind of cute. She's looking for a relationship. I'm looking for a relationship. So we don't know the way that it may show up.
Yeah.
I mean, our dream life might be right there, but it's going to show up in a completely different way than we could have even planned, and it may be more magnificent than we could have ever even imagined. But I would think that it would be.
I love the video, by the way. I watched it, and I said, what's neat about it, what I saw in the video was something a little bit different. What I saw was a millennial, somebody who I believe they were driving a Tesla, so they're into EVs and likely digital age electronics, and this is an issue that a lot of Gen Zs, Gen X, and millennials are always on the phone. If you're always in your communicative device and you're not actually talking to people, you're not practicing communication skills. You're not practicing reaching out and connecting with others relationally. And what was brilliant about it is that young woman actually thought enough of herself to be able to connect with another human being in a lighthearted way. And I just about bet they're probably going to turn out to be friends. The video that he made was to try and find her because he didn't get her name. He hadn't gotten her name, so he put a video out, on TikTok, hoping that maybe he says, I don't know, this may go viral or whatever, but I want to find this woman and thank her for reaching out and telling me that I was handsome and who thought enough of me and themselves to connect with another human being. And this is what we need more of. We need it exponentially. This world, this is one of the challenges we have in the world, is that people aren't talking to each other, getting to know each other, right? And just imagine, she didn't know he was gay. Maybe she doesn't know anybody who's gay. So she can develop a friendship with him, and she can now have contrast in her life that will help her be a better human being, a more compassionate, empathetic human being, a kinder human being, a more loving human being. This is what I was seeing when I saw this video, and to me, I do this sort of thing all the time. I'll tell you this real quick little story. 2 days ago, I was standing in line at the grocery store, and they were ringing up my stuff, and this other woman came in. She was gorgeous in her own right. She had long flowing gray hair, and she reminded me of a hippie in the back in the day when I was growing up, in the 60s and 70s, early 70s. And she was probably around, if I had to guess her age, it would be that she was in her 70s and mid to late 70s. And she said, I was sitting there minding my own business, and she said, "My, you are an incredibly handsome man." And I said, the cashier stopped ringing up stuff. I said, she looked at her, and I looked at her too, and I said, "Oh, thank you so much. That is like an amazing compliment to me. It's awesome." And I stepped away from the pay thing, and I walked back to her, and I said, "What is your name?" And I started talking to her, and I said, "You're a really adorable woman. I mean, you're gorgeous. Evidently, you're taking really good care of yourself." And she goes, "Yeah, I am." And I said, "That's fantastic." And kind of a little tete-a-tete moving around. And names weren't important, but the fact that she thought enough to say something like that, to me, I'm very grateful. I'm incredibly grateful that because everything I do for myself, I do with intention. And so I didn't get to 65 and looking like this by accident. by making bad choices. And when people give me compliments like that are younger than me, not necessarily her, because it wasn't the time or the place to go into anything like that. I'm sure she had her act together, and she had evidence of it. And I tell them, look, you figure out what you want, but just not what you want tomorrow or next week or this year. Think 20, 30, 50 years down the line. If you're 26, 27, 50 years is not old. It's not. With medical advancements, knowledge, enlightenment, you can read things that can help you. There's enough knowledge out there and enough enlightenment that will allow you to make the choices you need to make today to have long-term benefit in health and wealth and just about every category you can imagine, right? So I tell people it's play an active role in the choices that you're making in your life and the responses to life that you are engaging in, because all of those are going to add up in time to who you are, how you feel, what you think about your life and yourself and the people around you and your friends, everything in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. That's going to happen. And time is flying by very, very quickly because we're living in a digital age where we read things, we absorb information at a much faster clip. So I'm very grateful to that woman, and I thought the video was fantastic. And I encourage more of our listeners, if you want something, if you want a relationship, make a friend. That's where it starts.
I agree.
Make a connection and make a friend. And I've never been someone who said, you want to get married, you want to have a family, and that's your driving force. That's fine. However, there are some steps ahead of that in order to ensure that all of that works out. And it's not the end result of being married and having kids that's important. It's the journey that gets you there, right? That journey of how you found that person and how you were connected, the serendipity involved, because it's just about serendipity any way you look at it, right? It's just you bump into someone and you hear the stories of how people met, and you're going like, I would have never paid attention to you if that happened, and you find out that it turned into something. Yeah, think about that for a second. What does your mama say? Don't talk to strangers. You go up believing that for 20 years, 25 years. Well, you're not going to talk to a stranger, right? You need a formal introduction. Well, there may not be one. Maybe you're being guided to talk to that person in the grocery store line because they are on the same wavelength as you. And that's what you're looking for. It's somebody who's vibrating and resonating at the same frequency as you. That's where it starts, right?
Right. Well, and sometimes they're new to the area. I mean, you don't ever know what the reason is. Sometimes they're an electrician and they just have a part-time job, and guess what? You start having a problem. You're like, hey, you know what? I think I met that person. And I think the universe has a way of pointing you in the right direction for the next step in your manifestation journey, no matter what it is. And it really, I think it's about being self-aware, starting to recognize these little nudges. I can't remember what the book was called, but it was like a wink from the universe. You would get these little winks.
I think you mentioned that one before. Absolutely. You get a wink from the universe.
Yeah, you do. And I think that when you do, whether we choose to act on them is really up to us. But if you commit to something and you say, I really want to manifest this in my life, the universe winks at you and says, okay, you know what, here, we'll throw you a bone. Are you gonna take it? Are you not going to take it? And I'm a big believer, well, if this shows up in my life, there's a reason. Good, bad, or indifferent, I try not to judge it. I try to look at it and come from a neutral standpoint. I mean, I can love on anything, no matter what it is. And I have been practicing Ho'oponopono. Every time I have something that appears to be a challenge, I just jump right in and just love on it and love on it and love on it and find something to be inspired by. And before I know it, something shifts the energy. And it brings in, for me anyway, a higher level of positive energy. And I've been so adamant about this because I hear so many teachers that are whether they be astrologers or channels, they're all saying the same thing. The era of, this is a new era. The karma and the story that we were born to and all that stuff, we left that behind at the end of 2023. 2024 is something new. And I'll be darned if I'm going to be left behind on that train that, the other one leaves the station into this wonderful 5D reality where people are connected, and it's all about heart-centeredness. And I want to be in the band that's playing on in this amazing symphony of harmony. And really, I keep seeing so many things about creation and that the abundance that we're creating is really from a place of the heart. And that's what this show is all about. It's about our connection to love and to that heart-centeredness. And I just really, for my own self, I do a lot of inner work, and I pay attention to those little winks from the universe. When it keeps showing up and up and up. And it may be, I always say this, it's like, when you get a lesson or whatever, and you say that you want something, the universe is going to test you. And they're like, are you sure you want that? And you're like, yeah. And then you'll get another test, and it's like, are you really sure? And then a third time, are you really, really sure? Because it's that stick-to-itness that, no, you know what, I'm very clear. These are my passions. This is what I want. I know this is going to be amazing. I have imagined this. I can feel it. I want to, just thrive and be free and be joyful and all of those other things that make my heart sing. And that's where I want to be. That's where I want to play. And
yeah, that's awesome, and so true. All of it. I mean, this is the age of change. There's no doubt about it. We've slipped into a different universe. Now we have to dump the baggage of the past and craft a new beginning. Benchmark the past as having happened. It's over with. We can't go back and change it. All we can do is learn from it. Hopefully we've done that. Now it's time to just let it go. In a very matter-of-fact and pragmatic way, we have to, dump the load of the past into the proverbial recycle bin, and that's it, and let it go. Eject it out into space and write a new story for ourselves. This is the year to do it, which is interesting because I think Bashar and the teachers talk about how this is the year of change and a year where you have to. It's the year where you can imagine what you want for yourself. You can imagine it, and you can then invest the emotions into it, and you can position yourself for it. And let me tell you what's empowering. Empowering is behaving as if you have something. That's empowering. Very empowering. And instead of doubting or putting limitations on what we believe is possible, it doesn't cost a dime for someone who is in a circumstance where they are needing a leg up to imagine themselves having that leg up, already being there. That's what we're talking about. And you apply this, what we're talking about, to actual circumstances. It's just that. It's someone being $50,000 in debt, saying to themselves, believing that debt is evaporated, that they've already, and celebrating the fact, joyously, not by going out and spending more money, but celebrating within themselves that it's already gone. It's happened. That's student debt. If it's running your life, ruling over your emotions, you've put the cart before the horse. Being happy is not going to occur if you have the date of your happiness 20 years from now or 25 years from now when that debt is finally paid off. You have every capability of being happy today and, really applying what we're saying and saying, you can believe fully 150, 200, 500, 1,000,000% that has already paid off, and you can behave and invest in the emotions of having it over. And that's what we're talking about. Not letting it drive your perceptions and responses to life. Yeah, I mean, it's in reality, it exists. However, as Bashar put it, you can't resonate. You have to be resonating at the frequency of what you want now, not when you get it. Because when you get it may be way beyond the time when you can actually apply it. And I know plenty of people who have lots of money but can't travel because they have health issues. And they wish 40 years earlier that they'd started traveling. But no, they were caught up in amassing and hoarding wealth. And now look at them. They're saying, I wish I'd traveled more earlier. Seeing the world now is a lot more challenging, and I'm not appreciating it as much as I probably would have if I'd done it 40 years ago, 45, 50 years ago. And there, on the flip side, are wonderful young people who are doing just that. They're enjoying life. They're enjoying the world. They are literally setting their priorities and saying that the job, career, the family is not necessarily the priority right now for me. What's the priority is getting contrast between me and the world, understanding what, and making friends in various parts of the world. Not necessarily backpacking, but I ran into a young lady out of Dallas that works for a health company. There's a big health conglomerate that's in Dallas, and she is some sort of upper echelon administrator. And she was sitting by herself in the same restaurant we were eating, and I said, I'm going to get up and go talk to this young lady. She was a beautiful black woman, and I went over and I said, hey, what are you doing here by yourself? And she said, I do this all the time. I said, gosh, that's wonderful. She said, yeah, I get up. If I get 5-6 days off, I'm on a flight. I'm going somewhere. And I'm thinking,
oh, nice.
And I said, okay, that's great, but we are where she was a plane ride of 9 hours from Dallas, plus a wait in the airport in Istanbul, and another hour and a half to where I met her. Okay? So
wow.
This is somebody who, when I talk about commitment, that's commitment. That's commitment to actually see the world. Yeah, I mean, she stood there. She says, "Yeah, if I get 5-6 days off in a row, I'm gone. I'm buying a plane ticket to somewhere in the world, not down the street, not a staycation. I don't ever tell myself I'm all tired. I can't do anything." She says, "I've been all over the place. I was in India last month." She says, "Yes."
Wow.
She says, "Yeah,
that's wonderful.
I'm here in Turkey." She was doing balloon rides, because we all do balloon rides over there. But I just got back from a beautiful ATV trip through the desert out here, through the valleys. And I said, wow, that is amazing. She said, yeah, come, I enjoy.
Amazing.
I love traveling by myself, she says. Yeah, I love it. I don't let anything stop me. And I said, fantastic.
Good for her.
How many people would do that, right?
It's wonderful because, and that, again, goes along with manifestation and what you want. She was very clear about, it didn't matter whether she has somebody or not, and then she visualizes where she wants to go. Yeah. And then she takes the action steps to put herself there. When she's there, she enjoys herself. She celebrates even the little things that she has an opportunity to do. It keeps her motivated, inspired. And then, I'm sure on some level she is very self-assured. She believes in herself and what she can do and what she can accomplish and what she attracts. And to be able to travel by yourself like that is incredible. I mean, I really have to applaud her. I love that story. And she rewards herself, for her hard work. She works through this high-powered job, and she rewards herself and enjoys her life. And really, what a beautiful story, Michael.
Yeah, living without excuse.
Talk about manifesting. Oh, my goodness.
I mean, it's like she creates a reality every month. And I'm like, wow, that is beautiful. That is so beautiful, Which is not just, he says, I said, where's the next plane going? I want to go there. So like, that is fantastic. And it's a lot of people, I'm sure many of our listeners as well, would sit around, we make excuses for why we can't do something, why we can't go there, why we can't arrange our lives around what we're most passionate about. Her passion happens to be travel. Other people's passion, I know some people, man, I ran into another gentleman in the airport at the baggage carousel at LAX who was coming back from a game, a 49ers game in Arizona, right? Oh, no, Las Vegas. They had just played the Rams. And I said, wow, so what are you doing through here? He says, we got season tickets to the 49ers, and I go to we all go, there's like 4 or 5 or 6 of them, and then we go to away games, at least one away game a month. I said, really? He says, yeah, we go watch them play. And that's what he's passionate about, right? So what's unique is, he's a football fan. He loves seeing his favorite team, and he arranges, and his wife does, and his other friends do. They all resonate at a frequency where everything is possible around that passion. And that's where we have to put ourselves. We have to put ourselves resonating at the frequency of what is possible, and with the passions that we have, passionate interests that we have in our life, that they're aligned with our skills and the skills we're going to learn, because of a passion may require new skills. Be passionate and positive about all of it, about being able to take ourselves wherever it is we see ourselves going, and feeling, more importantly, as if we're there already.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'm so grateful to each and every one of you that make the time to listen and join Michael and I in our passion for sharing the things that we've learned and these nuggets of wisdom that we've embodied and brought into our lives. And it really is a passion of both of ours to share what we've learned with you. And I hope that our listeners here on Connect to Love on PRN-FM can feel that. There is so much love that comes from you and from my heart to all of you. It just is, it's an honor and a pleasure. I'm just so grateful, and I really encourage each one of you to unleash that power within and manifest your wildest dreams. And Michael, is there anything else you want to say before we sign off today?
I don't know if I can add anything to that, be honest with you. It's been such a pleasure. It's always a great ride with you every week. The unscriptedness of this show is, in my view, one of its greatest assets, that we don't sit around and try to figure out what to say, that we are, everything is from the heart. I want our people to, our listeners on the show and on the podcast, to experience life, every ounce of life that is out there for them. So hopefully they're doing that.
Absolutely. Abundant blessings to you all. Thank you.